And with that...
What's up, MAGFest?
What's up, MAGFest? Welcome to Video Game Music Theory Mode Select. I bet you can guess who came up with that title.
The MacBook.
Yeah, the MacBook. We actually were like between like 4 or 5 different. Oh no, what'd you do?
It's fine.
We were between like 4 or 5 different titles.
Yeah, we had a bunch of them.
I think we got to Mode Select, and Carlos was like, "Guys, I really like Mode Select." I was like, "Fine, dude, just take it." Carlos likes puns. If yeah.
If you didn't know.
Me neither. All right, who are we?
Okay, why don't you start?
Hi everyone, I'm FamilyJules. Thank you. I do heavy metal video game guitar covers predominantly on my YouTube channel, FamilyJules, and
You mean Jules Conroy?
Or Jules Conroy, where I make doorbell
videos.
content. Yeah. And I also contributed all of the guitars to the recently released Cadence of Hyrule on the Nintendo Switch.
Yay, yay, Jules is a good boy. Hello, I'm Insane in the Rain. I make video game jazz arrangements on YouTube. Haven't speed ran Wii Music in a couple of months now, but
I'm like over a year.
I think my skills might be declining, unfortunately.
Yep.
It's that low timpani pitch. Sometimes I can't tell if it's an E or a D double sharp or an F flat. Sometimes.
That's you mean all the same note?
That's the skill you get for going to Berkeley. You get to speed run Wii.
Listen, Jules. Listen, Jules. You know how I got on this panel?
How? You went to Berkeley.
I went to Berkeley.
Oh, my turn. Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sab Irene, and I've been making video game music, saxophone stuff, music theory stuff, kind of anything that you can think of. When I'm not killing myself making YouTube videos, I'm a teacher. I teach children and adults of all ages. I like to learn a lot of instruments, and I stream piano stuff on Twitch. And I like Chrono Trigger, if you didn't know, by 3 copies in 1 picture.
I'm 8-Bit Music Theory. I just, thank you. I just woke up. No, what do I do? I make YouTube videos. I make YouTube videos where I analyze video game music.
Hey, Ben, I changed your picture.
Oh.
You just had that right at the ready.
My name's 8-Bit Music Theory. I'm a little monkey, and I like to use branch poke.
He grooky.
No, I analyze video game music on YouTube, and try and take little kernels of music theory knowledge, and share them with the world.
So we've all 4 of us have been deeply saturated and have marinated in much music theory over the past years of our study. But what not a lot of people seem to like, especially as you get deeper and deeper with this stuff, I think a lot of people kind of lose that attachment to the people who have no idea anything about music theory. So this panel, we're really trying to help kind of bridge the gap between people who are really interested in music theory, who have been confused getting into it, or maybe people who are into music theory and want a refresher on some of the basics. Yeah. So on this little collection of screens on here, we have a little. Just some screenshots that I took that show how we use music theory in our craft. So this top one is me. This is the Sibelius, the sheet music notation software, and I use music theory all the time when I'm arranging music. This one down here is one of Sab's music theory videos. This is the D13 opening chord in Ben's opening 251, and then this is MIDI. That's me programming my doorbell. Does anybody know what song this is? Just the MIDI roll?
I think we went through. Yeah, we.
There you go. Yeah, it's my little name. But that. Yeah. No.
Awesome. So we're going to start you off with some basics here. Jules is going to teach you how to
read notes.
How to read notes.
Do you know how to read notes? I'm gonna. Cool.
Actually, how many of you have any sort of basic music theory experience out there?
Oh wow.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. How many of you have exactly 0 music theory experience?
Woo!
Awesome.
Okay.
Sweet.
Okay.
Sweet.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
All right, we're doing this panel again, way before I'm supposed to wake up. But all right, here we go. All right. So, y'all seen a piano before? All right. So the piano's got a bunch of buttons on it. We refer to them as keys. There are white keys and there are black keys. When you go to the right on the piano, the pitches tend to get higher. And if you go to the left, thank you. He's acting all surprised, but we've been doing this for like 2 years.
Yup.
And then if you go to the left on the piano, the pitches get lower. And that's only if you hit the white keys. If you start messing with the black keys, you're going to start getting some saucy territories. But the idea is that all of the white keys are all of the pitches that don't have a sharp or flat. So we call those accidentals, unfortunately.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah,
Whoops.
we'll get there. But for now, when you're looking at a staff and you see essentially all of these letters, in this case, we are only looking at the white keys. You don't see any sharps or flats or anything. So the way we read this is you go C. You want to point at C on the keyboard. There it is. There he is.
Woo.
Hello.
C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's exactly how you would play that on the right there. There's two different kinds of clefs. There's the treble clef and the bass clef. All the clef does is tell us where the notes are on that staff. On the treble clef, C is that first ledger line, we call it a ledger line, right below the staff. And C on the bottom, on the bass clef, which is the one on the bottom, is the second space. So, there you go. Y'all following along so far? Epic.
Cool. Let's go to rhythm.
Rhythm. So,
Yeah,
how do
Jules.
we measure the pulse of the music? Since music is a temporal art form, we need to be able to organize at what time these pitches, these notes happen. We use most typically the quarter note, but that is a subdivision of the most typical rhythm, which is the whole note of how would you?
Let me play this.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
That's too fast. That's too fast. Hold on. Okay.
Slow it down.
So the idea is that
Can't
you
slow
have
it down now.
0.5 speed.
if we're measuring music as 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, every clap I'm doing is a whole note. Because it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. It's holding for the whole measure.
It's a long clap.
It is a very long clap. Right. So now if we use half notes, we're kind of breaking the measure in half.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right.
1, 2, 3,
Good.
4. 1.
So chord notes is
4.
4. So 1 on every single beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now eighth notes, we put an and in between.
1, 2, 3, 4.
No, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and good. And this is how we notate it, yeah. So 16th notes is 1E and a 2E and a.
1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a.
Okay, smooth and groove.
I hate this. You guys got that? You guys got rhythm? Any questions so far? Anyone lost completely? Good? Are we good?
Just
it's
think
okay.
of-
You can be lost.
Yeah.
You don't be afraid.
One thing I'll just say with rhythm is when you're trying to find the pulse of something, the go-to thing is think about how you would dance to it. Like some people, like if you think about Megalovania, if you think about ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, like you're not going to dance like that, you'll think ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I mean,
or
I might dance to it like that.
So you just think about what can I actually dance to, and that kind of helps you feel the bigger pulse in the piece.
I think what
Sure.
a lot of prog metal guitarists forget is this is supposed to help us keep time. So like the idea is not to be like, oh yeah, this song I just wrote is in 300 beats per minute. No, it's in 150. You know what I mean? So it's the rhythm is supposed to help us keep time and everybody else in your ensemble. Not to be a pretentious shithead. Okay, so this is these are scales.
With scales are basically just like collections of notes.
Yeah.
They're just groups of notes, and they have different sound, like feelings and emotions associated with them.
When we're in a specific key, in this case, if we're in the key of C, these are the would you say the strongest notes to use?
Yeah.
The most correct notes to use when we're
Sure.
when we're
The
in-
least wrong.
the least wrong.
The most expected.
Yeah, most expected. Yeah, for sure. So if we're playing in the key of C, so our basic chord is a C major chord. These are the collection of notes that we are going to be using. So if you ever hear somebody say, play in the key of whatever.
Blank major.
You're going to play, blank major, you're going to play the major scale or notes from the major scale of that key. In this case, it's C. Every single one has a different collection of notes, but C is the easiest to teach, so we're showing that one. Sometimes you might get hit with minor, which is a much darker scale, and it has a few accidentals, is the first ones we're starting to see. So if you're told to play in the key of C minor, this is the collection of notes that you're going to be wanting to pull from. Then, but as you can see, we have a bunch of accidentals all over the staff. Typically, we don't want to muddy up the staff with a bunch of unneeded accidentals, so we actually just throw them all at the front of the measure, and you're expected to just know okay, well that arrangement of accidentals at the beginning of the measure means we are in the key of C minor, and the instrumentalist will know how to play in that key. So
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, I shouldn't assume anything. But yeah, so that's the idea. Everyone following along? Has anyone learned anything yet?
Yeah!
Yeah,
right,
cool.
We're doing a job!
Yeah, more or less.
So we just talked about scales.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when you start talking about modes, which is the subject of this panel, they're like, oh God, modes, that's so scary.
How many of you guys, as soon as modes got thrown in, you were just like, oh, okay,
I'm out.
yeah. I bet you're all guitarists probably. No, it's funny because modes are the easiest on guitar because once you learn one scale shape, it's pretty much the same all the way up the fretboard, which is really, really nice. It's actually harder for pretty much every other instrument because it's like an entirely new landscape you have to learn. So no, that's fine. Modes are really kind of, for some reason, kind of difficult to explain to somebody who doesn't understand it. So that's the whole point of this panel is we want to make modes as easy as possible for you guys to understand. Excuse me. Sorry.
So modes are, as I wrote on the bottom, a mode is just a scale. If you replace the word mode with scale in most contexts, it means the same thing.
Yeah,
It's like the square rectangle rule, basically.
Yeah, sort
but
of like
with
that.
scales and mode.
Think of mode as derivative. It's a scale derivative of another scale. That's essentially the definition of a mode.
Right. One of the ways that scales are most prominently taught is by you play the C major scale, then you start on C major scale starting on C is C Ionian, C major scale starting on D is D Dorian. And this is very commonly a way that this is taught, where you just, you start on a different note and you play all the white keys. So you go through all the modes. We have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian.
And that's if you start at the furthest left note and you go individually up the white keys. That would be how you would find, go back to the first one. This would be C Ionian. The next one would be D Dorian.
That's a D.
That's a D, and then
E Phrygian,
F Lydian,
G Mixolydian.
yeah, and so on and so forth. And the idea is, what's cool about these is the intervals between each note have shifted. There's one, or in one case, two cases where a normally certain key would have been either made sharp or flat, which gives it a whole new flavor, which is what we're kind of studying here.
Right, and that's why it's time for the big idea.
Big idea. Don't clap, please.
Don't clap for him. Don't do it.
Just encouraging him.
Don't clap.
Horrible.
Thank you for clapping. Thanks for not listening to these fools. Each mode has its own color. That's what we're trying to say here. In that you might typically associate major with happy and minor with sad, and you might think that's it. But in reality, just like human emotions, there's a huge range of complex inflections that you can communicate through your music, and using modality or modes or scales is one way to achieve that. So we're going to be presenting. We're going to get to the video game music part. We're going to be presenting several. It's like 2 slides down here. I can almost see it on my screen. So we're going to be presenting lead sheets of these songs, which are basically just like the skeleton of a song, just so we don't have to go through transcribe every single part and show them to you. These are like the basics of reading a lead sheet. There'll be a little line that scrolls along with the sheet music on the screen, so you'll hear everything. So even if you can't read, it's no problem. So we're going to start off with good old Ionian.
Which is just a fancy way to say major.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing as the
We
majors.
also have D&D alignments for each of these scales for you guys. So this is like the lawful good scale.
Yeah. So you've all heard the major scale before. basically it. Yeah.
classic.
You will notice that there is in all of these modes will present this one highlighted pitch. That pitch is called the characteristic pitch, which is essentially the single pitch in the scale that does the most work for defining what the sound of it is. Because the major scale is so common, we don't really think about the characteristic pitch, but that'll come up in some later
Everything's
scales.
kind of in context to either the major or the minor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Yeah.
So this is
but when you hear that format, yeah, you're a major.
yeah.
And we're also going to be referring to these pitches from the bottom of the top as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and
Yes,
7.
1,
if it
2,
wasn't
3.
already
Yes.
confusing as hell.
So, an appropriate song that demonstrates the simplicity of the major scale is Pallet Town for Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, which is fitting because it's the first town, and they present it in the Ionian mode.
Apparently nobody likes it.
One thing you might notice is that there are no accidentals anywhere in the sheet music, which is means it's an Ionian usually.
Yeah.
That's the major scale. Wow.
Yay.
So it's very comfy, you know. There's not like a whole lot of like tricks up its sleeve. There's not really a whole lot of spice.
It's like vanilla. It's vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, it's vanilla ice cream, which
Yeah.
is good. You know, it's great for the
It's the
context of the
foundation
song.
for everything.
Right, exactly.
Cool,
So, you know, what we're trying to get into on essentially the next slide is how we can start adding a little bit of spice.
So now we're going to talk
take it with the
about Dorian. So, oh, did I do something wrong? Oh, okay. If any of you ever did jazz band, this was like your warm-up scale, like doing that Dorian scale, that raised 6th scale degree. So it's based on our natural minor scale that we showed you before, and we're just raising that 6th note. Essentially with the modes, you're just changing the spaces between each of the notes. That's what an interval is. It's the distance between a note. So we're just kind of moving it around, and that's what makes it sound, you know, a different color, a different shade. And we call this one the true neutral one. I only played D&D once, so I'm sorry.
One of the kind of the nerdy reasons it's called the true neutral scale is that this is the only scale that inverts upon itself. If you take it's kind of complicated, but like the
I
pitch
love when
structure
music
is
theorists say it's kind of complicated.
okay, but like for those who know music theory in the room, the pattern is whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, something like that. But I might have said that wrong. But it inverts upon itself.
So it's
like
like-
if you flip it
So it's
upside
a-
down, it's the same thing.
It's a palindrome.
yeah, it's a palindrome scale.
That's a much. Never mind. All right.
Yes.
Let's get to the example. So we have a really classic one, which is Forest Maze from Super Mario RPG. A lot of forest themes tend to use Dorian because there's that mysticism to it. You'll just listen. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah,
Pay attention to the note that's highlighted here.
Yes, we highlighted the note that's, you know, the
characteristic.
pitch.
Oh, no.
Oh no!
No.
Spoiler!
That's the most metal part.
It's so good.
Yeah.
But
It's
you
also-
can see how much it really like sticks the landing.
Yeah.
Like that's the. I mean,
Yeah.
all the emphasis it lands on ba-da-ba-ba-bum-bum-bum-ba-da. That altered pitch is like, you know, it really hammers it in.
Yeah, that's a big part of this stuff too. You can really kind of gloss over a lot. Like one of the reasons why like the blues scale works, which has like one of the worst intervals that you can possibly use. The reason it works is you gloss over it so quickly that you don't really notice it.
Yeah.
What really makes these colors kind of shine is when you put emphasis on these notes. So that's a great example of a Dorian where it's just like, we are in Dorian right now.
Hello.
So, hello. So keep that in mind if you're trying to play around with these too.
How many of you have heard of Undertale? Okay.
It's a 5-year-old game.
A game for 5-year-olds or
Yes. That too.
another spoiler. So, kind of like we wrote it up here that sometimes it's not necessarily sad, it's more reflective, which kind of goes along with that. Like mysticism thing with the forest theme where, the ruins is all about like, right when you get there and you're kind of figuring things out and it's this like very new territory in the game. So it's kind of nice that the music is very reflective of that.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that it's in a minor key,
Yeah.
but it's not sad.
Right.
No one would like say that sounds very sad by itself. It's
Right.
sort of like in the middle, kind of ambiguous.
Now we're going to talk about Phrygian, which is my favorite mode. Play it.
I'll play that again so you can hear the characteristic pitch.
So what's really unique is that up to this point, we have always seen that the spacing has been the same, where it's always been C to D in the first two modes. This is the first instance where we have a smaller distance, where we're just going from the white key to the black key. I always think of it as blue, but we did it yellow for a reason, because a lot of desert themes are often in Phrygian, and also a really, really good battle that we're going to get to. So like I said, I like Chrono Trigger, which is why I told them that I wanted to do this mode.
Notice neutral evil.
Neutral evil, yeah, sorry. Just listen, it's very... Tell me that that's not great music, okay? I'm sorry. So you can hear like the whole battle is being driven by this kind of half step, the da da da. It really creates this
Tension.
Tension,
Yeah,
and neutral evil sound. Is that the one we gave to it? I don't remember.
Yeah, neutral
evil, yeah.
And then we got another example of
Can you explain to me why you wrote every villain is lemon?
because
Okay, it's
evil
just-
from SpongeBob,
it's
they go every
SpongeBob
villain is
lemons.
lemons.
What season was that? I don't think I saw that one.
It's like really early on with
Wait, really?
Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Yeah, it's a really early episode.
I'll have to
This is
watch
what we
it again.
talk about with music theory, SpongeBob. Yay.
Yeah.
One thing to point out is that the melody of the song is literally just a descending
Oh, yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
Like it's just the scale.
Da, 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 da. It just keeps going down in the motion of the scale.
Yeah, it's very obviously Phrygian.
It's awesome. That's what it is.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite examples.
Yeah.
It's a little more ambiguously Phrygian, like Phrygian curious, but like
Yeah.
but this is Phrygian.
You can really hear that shift when that bass note moves up to
Yeah.
that flat two.
Yeah.
And even just like, it dancing around the flat two with the bum, bum, ba-da. It's like doing the first scale degree and the third scale degree. It's like dancing around that characteristic tone so that like when it happens, like it flows really nicely, but it still sticks out. And then it's cool. Oh, go ahead.
Would you say the Jaws theme is in Phrygian, technically?
Just because it's half steps?
Just because it moves in
Oh,
like...
yeah.
Oh, I guess so.
And that's probably a good way to kind of describe what that feeling like da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, like that tension between those two notes. And like honestly, because the Jaws theme is so iconic, a lot of that stuff kind of paints what we perceive these colors to be too.
Right.
Like songs that we already know, what we associate those things with. So I don't know, maybe in an alternate timeline,
Woo.
like Phrygian would be a happy scale. I don't know.
It's time for 8-bit music theory.
It's time for Ben.
Oh, this is not not you.
Lydian.
Yeah.
This is another of the. Play it again. Sorry. This. So if Dorian was like the jazz minor scale, this is the jazz major scale. And I think it's most interesting to compare these to either the major or minor scale, whichever one they're most related to, because if you remember Ionian and Palatown, and it can almost have like a nursery rhyme type of feel, where most nursery rhymes or really simple songs are just like kind of going up and down the major scale, like Mary had a little lamb, like that kind of thing. And this very much does not have a nursery rhyme kind of feel.
This is like the overly attached girlfriend scale. It's like really happy.
Yeah. Well, it's
Really
interesting because
in-phase.
it's major, so it's happy, but it also has a tritone interval against the root of the scale. So that C and F sharp together sound really gross. But when you have them together and then also have all the other notes of the scale, it's spicy, but it's not gross.
Super
It's
spicy.
bright. I've heard a lot of people describe it as bright. So it's super, this example is great because it's basically A-flat Lydian for the first like 9 bars straight or however long.
And as a friend referred to this galaxy this morning, they called it Trash Galaxy. There's actually an error right there.
Oh no.
That should be a D flat.
We never fixed that.
My Spidey sense like had a bad moment when I saw that.
How dare you?
I was going to
that's a
say a
good,
sharp 5 against a G flat major 7 sharp 11. Wow, we're not in super Lydian.
Damn.
Don't pay attention.
No, it's a good example of how a song doesn't have to stick to one mode for the whole time to get the sound of that mode, you know?
Yes.
Or like even back in the Dorian example, the Beware the Forest Mushrooms, there was a big A major chord after the F sharp major chord with an A natural, which would put it in C sharp natural minor, but so it flits between the two modes, which is super common. So this next example is another just like super common example of this mode, Lost Woods. You hear that, like again, all the emphasis is put on that B natural in the key or over the F chord.
What a hot beat.
Yeah, hot. Come on. Right there. That's not what he says.
Yeah.
A good way to put emphasis on these notes if you're playing around with these at home is make the rhythmic beat that you use a little bit longer usually. So like as you can see here, you have like 2 eighth notes, and then that emphasis note is the quarter note. That really kind of like stays in the listener's head for longer, which makes the listener say, "Hey, that's an important note." So I would highly recommend doing that.
Yeah. If you're just flying up the scale really fast, it wouldn't have the same effect.
Yeah. Mixolydian. They gave me the jazz scale, which is weird. It's like this is the kind of scale that you'd use over like a dominant chord or something.
Wow.
The what?
We'll talk about that.
What?
We'll talk about that later. That'll be for Music Theory 455.
Oh Jesus. Yeah, Mixolydian is very complicated, everybody. So this is essentially a major scale with a sharp 7. So you have a little bit
Flat 7.
flat 7. You're right.
We're
So
here
there's
for you, Jules.
Thank you. Yeah, I need more sleep. So, flat 7 is the characteristic pitch of the Mixolydian scale. Is the chaotic good scale, I suppose. Yeah, it's a lot more heroic, adventurous than kind of your typical major scale. So let's look at some examples. What you'll notice here is, why'd you spell my name Juul? All right. What you'll notice is so what happens when you have a major scale like that, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The T and the do are really, really close together, and they create a lot of tension, which is great if you're trying to create a resolution. To create really strong resolution, you have to have strong tension. What happens is we kind of like cut that edge a little bit with the Mixolydian scale by having a little bit further of a distance between the 7th scale degree and the next 1st scale degree. So listen in this song how kind of the chords and the melody kind of outline these chords that feel a little bit smoother. major, it's very happy and heroic, but there's no real you know, how would that sound? Is like that would be in like actual major, which would be like whoa.
Yeah.
That's a really great example of mixed Latent scaling. Here's the Chocobo theme. Yeah, not much meandering. We're just adventuring. We're having a good time, you know?
It's very like Ted Bobby kind of song.
Yeah.
So listen here, when you see that D7 come up, it changes modes.
And you can feel the whole thing shift, too. That bass like yeah. Birds.
Birds.
This is the bird scale. But yeah, and also just because a dominant chord is essentially a major chord, but with the flat 7. So that's why if you ever see a dominant chord and you need to improvise over it and you have no idea what to do, Mixolydian scale on that one will work great.
A+.
Cool. Okay, now for the normal minor mode. So Aeolian is just a fancy word for the minor scale, right?
If anyone says, I would like to play this in Aeolian, just, you know, slap
Punch
him in the
'em.
face, kick him in the nuts, and be like, yeah, all right.
So, I mean, this is just the straight up vanilla minor scale. It's lawful evil, I guess. I guess we wrote that.
Sure.
A good song that exemplifies this is...
We were really looking for like there's tons and tons of minor songs, but we were looking for songs that really exemplify like the characteristic of minor, you know, like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And this song is very, very obviously minor.
Hit it.
Where have you been searching all along, confessing while alone
And it's really obviously minor just because you're going between like 2 chords, and it just
without a
creates the minor mode.
sign, without grasping it. The real question to be asked: where have I been? I'm a sharpshooter at Post Masquerade, hiding both faces.
Right. So that is just as minor as it gets. I mean, the lyrics and the instrumentation contribute to that.
It's interesting because
timbre
like
as well.
that isn't really kind of what we automatically think of when we think of minor. When we think
Right.
of minor, I think a lot of people think like, oh, okay, so that's like the sad, depressing song. But like this song is cool because it really, I feel like, really hammers in what makes the natural minor scale what it is, and that's what it is. So, you know, if you want to talk about the next one.
Yeah, so what Jules was saying is that, or one thing that I sort of mentioned at the beginning of this panel is that the mode isn't everything in the song. Like, you know, there's in any piece of music, there's so much that goes into it. There's the harmony, which we've been talking about this whole time, but there are other things like tempo, the amount of slat bass you put in a track, the tempo, things like that.
How many times you fit Megalovania in?
Yes, exactly. So all those things contribute. And a good example of this is Guile's theme, which is actually very much in the natural minor scale. But when you think of Guile's theme, you don't think of, oh, the sad, depressing song.
It's
right?
upbeat. It's really nice.
Right, and often, sometimes the best songs are the ones that use contradicting elements in it. For example, you have this this very normally sad and melancholy natural minor scale, but when you're juxtaposing it with like a bop and drum beat and slap bass, like it creates
horns.
it creates a very
Yeah.
interesting mood.
Harmonically, you are still kind of hearing that same feeling you get from Beneath the Mask. Like just that same kind of element, even though it's completely different.
Ba-da-da-da-da-da.
So that's a good example of how a song can have a mode, but not necessarily reflect the mode, not have the overall emotion of the song, not necessarily reflect the mode. by including other elements in the song.
You guys are waiting for this one, aren't
You're waiting for this one.
Oh yeah, Ben.
Dun, dun,
Ben, take it away.
Yeah. The only man to find a song.
Yup.
So, for those of you who don't know, there's like, my whole life learning about music theory and modes. There are tons of people who try to teach it by, giving examples from music of each mode, like we're doing now. And when we get to Locrian, every time it's like, and this one no one never really uses. So I was like, well, that can't be true. And I am so psyched because I finally found a song that's just in Locrian and not like, it's kind of in Locrian, or like, yeah, it's in Locrian for like 1 second. But like, it's actually, so I'm pretty pumped. Oh, but before that, what makes Locrian is a minor scale with the flat second,
So like Phrygian,
and the flat fifth, which completely destabilizes the whole thing. You can think of the root and the fifth as being like the pillars of any scale. So messing with...
we just crumbled one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very unbalanced.
Yikes.
Play it for him again. Yeah.
Weird. But, and so people usually... yeah. No, people usually think of Locrian or talk about Locrian as a super, like, dissonant, horrible thing. And it kind of is, but like Carlos was saying, there's more, each of these modes doesn't just have one thing that they can do. It's like you can use this color in conjunction with other elements to create a whole palette of different feelings. So this is Nobuo Uematsu uses the Locrian mode in conjunction with kind of like film noir musical elements.
And snapping on
really
1 and 3.
Yeah, except
And the
for
industrial
that. I don't
noise, you can
approve of
forget that.
but
Okay.
let's just...
So there I was. The city drenched in fog.
Do you know how mad this makes me right now?
It just hurts my heart.
I think the funniest thing about this is we were trying to plan this a year ago, and we're like, oh, we're not going to find a Locrian one. And Ben's like, I have one.
You had one, man.
Didn't even have to do any reason. He's like, I have one. And we're like, all right.
So congratulations, you've made it through all the modes of the major scale.
Yay!
That's it. That's all
But
there is.
we're not done.
So again, just a quick recap. If you want to go home and play with these, the best way to find them very quickly is to get on your piano and just play all the white keys. C. If you start on C and go all the way up to C, you're going to get a major scale. But if you start on a different note and go up to that note again, you will have the next mode. So D all the way up to D will be Dorian. E all the way up to E will be Phrygian.
Yeah.
Easy way to grab those and play with them.
Okay, now we're gonna get more intense.
Yes, this is my favorite part. So, how many of you trying to explain music theory to your friends have been like, oh, major's happy and minor's sad? Show of hands. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Okay, you're wrong. It's okay. I do it too. I do it too. It's okay.
Well, I think
it's
yeah.
right and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Kind of. It goes back to what you're talking about. It's not just like, 1 and 2 ends of the spectrum or whatever. It's a gradient, and which is why we have bright to dark. So trying to describe emotions, but just being like it's happy but not happy when there's other ways to describe it.
I feel like it's like you can't give a child every emotion or every animal. You have to first kind of in child psychology you learn a concept called scaffolding,
Yes.
which is essentially the
Lev
idea of
Vygotsky, the man.
which is essentially the idea of just you can't possibly teach a kid every animal. You have to be the kid's going to be like, what's that? You go, well, that's a horse, and then they'll see a dog on the TV and like, that's a horse. It's like, no, that's
It's a dog, yeah.
But scaffolding that knowledge from, that's a four-legged creature, whatever.
Right.
So in the same way, we can teach people major is happy,
Initially,
minor is sad,
yeah.
initially, and then say okay, well, just like everything in life, it's not quite that simple.
Absolutely. So kind of how we organize this is we just went through those modes in the order that you see them, if you're playing it on a keyboard. But what kind of dictates it is that the next slide I'm thinking of? Yeah. So it'll help if we go to the next slide. So we have these two really open intervals, which are the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth. Play the stack of perfect fifths. See how like really open that sounds? Like,
I'll do it again. I'll do it again.
Yeah. It's kind of ethereal in a way, ambient, whatever descriptor you want to use. So all those notes, if you were to stack them and put them in a like order of a collection like we just did, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you get the Lydian scale, which is why it's our brightest mode, because when you do a stack of this like really open interval and rearrange it, you get that Lydian, which is why Lydian was at the top on the other page. And then essentially what you do is you're changing the distance of one of those in the stacks of fifths, and it's pulling them closer together, which is then how we get Ionian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, I'm screwing up. Don't listen to me.
Well, what's interesting is the perfect fifth is a very stable interval, which
it's
is
one
why
of the pillars, as Ben said.
Yeah, when we stack them, we get very stable sounds. But the perfect fourth is not so stable, as you'll hear.
Right.
This is my favorite. Not every, but most boss battle themes utilize this. It's a very alien, dark sound. So think of Ganon's theme from Ocarina of Time. That's my go-to example. Labos' theme from Chrono Trigger. There's a few others, but because we're gradually pushing those notes closer together, we end up with this really dark sound. And when we rearrange it, we get the Locrian, which is that super unstable scale. He's getting ready because he has a joke. So I'm sorry, I'm going to stop talking now.
But isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
it's
really cool.
Really cool, like how what that comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
Or how it derives from.
So going back to the idea of brightness and darkness, so when you're in the major key, there's no rule that you can't just take a break from the major key and dip your toes into minor for a little bit. And honestly, a lot of your favorite songs probably do that all the time. And we have a word for that. We call it...
Don't laugh.
Modal interchange.
We almost had silence.
Tumbleweed rules.
So, as I said, modal interchange allows you to borrow chords from other parallel modes. What I mean by parallel there is using modes that have the same letter name. For example, C Dorian is a parallel mode to C Ionian or C Mixolydian. So what we can do is if we're in the key of, in this case, this C comes from C Ionian, we can borrow this A flat, which isn't normally in the key, which isn't normally in C, but it exists in C Aeolian. So we can borrow that A flat to make the chord F minor. We can do the same thing with this B flat here. D and F are in the C major scale, but B flat isn't. That comes from C Mixolydian. So we can borrow these extra notes to add a little inflection of color into our cadences.
This concept of borrowing was something that I had a hard time kind of grasping on it originally, and we'll do questions at the end for sure. But it's more of a way to explain why it works rather than how you might go about.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the most part, hearing a minor 4 in a major key isn't something that I was just maybe today I'll borrow this note. It's more I know that sounds good. One of the best cadences of all time is the one of Hyrule. I'm just okay. Is the one from. Wow, that was delayed. I thought he was gonna spray.
Were you gonna say the Super Mario 64
I was
credits
wait,
theme?
where in Legend of Zelda does the 4 minor cadence?
Me too. Yeah.
Super Mario 64 is that what you're gonna say or no?
Cadence, I should explain, is kind of a musical punctuation of chords. So how a musical phrase will resolve, essentially. One of the coolest ways, in my opinion, is going a major 4, minor 4, 1, essentially. And I know that works. And sometimes, one of the main reasons of music theory isn't to flaunt it and whatever. I mean, you can, but the best utilization of it is to be able to explain why things work so that we can use it later, so that we can steal it, essentially.
It's our way of putting concrete terminology to the abstract nature of music. That's what it is at its most fundamental level. That's music theory.
Yeah, because we create all these rules, and
then we break them.
Well, then we're wow, that doesn't follow the rules, but that sounds good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we get these terms like borrowing and interchange and stuff like that.
Right. And so what I did is I put together, I took this song, the Smash Ultimate theme, LifeFlight, or this is technically isn't LifeFlight, but it's the same melody.
Same.
And I color coded it based on whenever it's in
A certain
mode. Just for time reasons, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because it mostly because like if you look at this, it's blue and green, blue and green, blue and green. Oh, there's some pink,
Ooh.
blue and green, blue and green. Oh, there's some yellow, and there's some weird stuff right there. So I'm going to start
Yes,
like
real weird.
right about here. You ready for this?
Hello.
That wasn't in the song. That was somebody else. What mode was that in?
What, the ringtone?
The ringtone.
E flat.
Well, that's not in mode.
The E flat mode.
The E flat mode, yeah.
So if you were following along with that and you didn't really hear any differences when we went between the green and the blue, it takes a while
Yeah.
to be able to like develop a fine ear to hear when it's shifting so subtly like that.
Yeah, this is also like we're trying to show an example that you guys would know as well, hopefully, and but this example particularly is tough to kind of hear the difference between because Aeolian and Dorian are so very similar. You know, there's only one note that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like Lost Woods where the characteristic pitch is just like hammered, like boom.
This is you, Mom.
So Ben.
Oh, it was me.
Oh,
So close to the end.
Was that me?
it's coming.
Honestly, Carlos put a lot of work into this, so let's give it up for
Yeah.
Carlos's amazing PowerPoint skills.
We just spew the ideas at him, and he makes it look all pretty.
Yeah.
So one way to use modes yourself that I find extremely interesting is once you understand the characteristic pitch of each mode, you can start to build chord progressions that capture the essence of that mode by basically doing math. So if you think of Lydian, for example, the characteristic pitch is the sharp 4 in a major key. So if you think, okay, I'm in C major, so I'll play a C major chord, because you have to establish what key you're in. Then I'm going to move to a chord with an F sharp in it. That's the equation. And then maybe move back to C after. That always immediately captures part of the essence of that modal color. So like, what chord has an F sharp in it? You know, D major. So if we can play that. You hear that kind of sound a lot in like Mario Galaxy and
Yeah.
tons of other tunes of like, especially over like a C bass pedal, moving to C to D to C. Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm dying here. So it's just like a very bright, very like explicitly Lydian kind of sound, as opposed to Ionian where you have the natural 4. You know, it's two different colors you can use there. So let's take a look. Mixolydian we kind of looked at before.
It's also a great way to kind of like isolate exactly what the feeling we get from these modes
Yeah,
are
this
too.
is
Yeah.
like modal window shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can use like in those in both the Chocobo theme and the Pokemon tune, we're both just, you know, G to F nat to F to G to F to G to F. Or if it was in the key of C, it would be C to B flat to C to B flat. So you know you can, even if they weren't thinking about it this way, like composers use this idea all the time. Dorian, let's move to the minor ones. That sounds like a funk song. Versus Aeolian. Totally different emotional quality, and it's only one note different, but it's that characteristic note, so it makes all the difference. And then Phrygian. That you hear that kind of thing a lot too in like boss battle themes and stuff.
Yes.
Where it's just like,
That spice.
yeah. So you only need 2 chords ever to like capture the sound of a mode in a harmonic progression.
And since it's so easy to evoke the sound of a mode using very little resources, I think that one game that shows this off very well is Zelda Ocarina of Time. Because if you think about the ocarina you get in the game, you really only have about 5 pitches to play with, right? And to me, it's fascinating how Koji Kondo is able to create so many wonderful songs that are very different in atmosphere, just using these 5 notes as like starting pitches. I'll just play.
If you guys are wondering what mode the ocarina notes are in, you'd say like probably D Dorian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so like contrast something like Zelda's Lullaby. Like even just that, those few notes with. Right, they're using the same collection of notes available in the ocarina, and even like with this. You can get so many different moods by just like picking very carefully which notes you want to use.
Which notes you want to use and how much emphasis you put on which characteristic notes.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. But that's always the one this is always the example that I always wanted to know. It's just like what's because I would always like hit all the notes. I'm like, this is so weird. What is this? Here it is. Yeah, it's cool.
So you've made it through all the modes of the major scale. You've learned everything.
Everything.
Except.
Not that.
Would you like to teleport to the forest? No, that's the minion of forest.
So you've learned all the modes of the major scale, but what about all the modes of the harmonic minor scale? What about all the modes? What about all the modes of the other of the?
The idea is that so all of the modes you just learned are all just modes of the major scale. Luckily, there's no I wouldn't say there's modes of the minor scale because the minor scale is
a mode of the major scale.
But have you guys heard of harmonic minor? So harmonic minor
Snake
is
charmer sound.
Yeah, a harmonic minor is a minor scale with a sharp 7. Did I get the sharp 7 right this time?
Raise 7 sharp.
I would say natural.
I would say
7.
raise.
Well, okay,
With
yeah.
the leading tone.
We're snobby.
I mean, if you're starting in minor, then you have to sharp it. So now, because that fundamental scale now has a different note, there are modes for each of those as well.
Yes.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
And then there's melodic minor scale, which is
raised
sharp
6 and 7 on the way
7.
up, and then on the way down, it's lowered 7, then lowered 6. Who came up with that? I don't know, but
so this never ends. There are utilizations of those modes as well,
Yes.
mostly in like jazz and stuff, which
Yes.
nobody really plays. So.
Say it with me. Jazz sucks.
oh,
We made sure we had 2 classical musicians and 2 jazz musicians to keep everything balanced for this panel. But so there's a lot to get into if you're really interested in this stuff. So please go home, play with this stuff.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun. So with the last little bit of time that we have, we would love to answer maybe a few questions, if that's okay with you guys and you guys.
Just come up to the mic up here, please.
Yeah.
that'd be so much easier. It's so hard to try and be like you and the.
We got about 5 minutes left for questions, so if you could do your best to keep them
short.
brief, we'll try our best too.
Short and sweet.
Should we just have one person answer a question to limit that?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, then this is going to be for 8-bit.
Hey.
Okay. So, I'm a singer. I'm trying to get more music. I'm with the Gamers of the Orchestra, Montclair Gamers of the Orchestra, based in New Jersey. Come check us out, please. But I'm trying to find vocal music that incorporates a lot of these ideas because they're all over video game music. But I need to find a way to deal with, how do you say, the actual physical limitations of the human voice and things that are capable.
Make your instrumentalist.
So how do you balance out this with, how do you balance out this with those kind of limitations? Is that just dependent per performer, or is that
It's per song, it also for limitations for a singer, I would say you have a literal physical limitation, so make your instrumentalist change because they can change keys for you, and they should. So
I mean, woodwinds need to breathe sometime.
nah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. What's up?
So
Yeah, you can lift up the mic if you need to. There you go. Kind of better.
So I just wanted to ask, would you say that the Aris theme from Final Fantasy VII is a good example of
Speak more into the mic. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is Aris theme from Final Fantasy VII a good example of mode changing, where it kind of switches between what I feel like 2 different stories? You have the high and then the low, and then it mixes both of them in.
Are you saying kind of just is it a good example of how it's telling the story?
Yeah, well, I mean, with the mode changes you showed there with between Lydia and Dorian, swapping between those, I feel like would that be a good example of incorporating that into a song?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
I mean, yeah. To elaborate on that, yeah, I think a great way to convey story and a feeling is definitely playing around with different modes and modal interchange. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joseph Hong. So it's just a question for all of you guys. If you can express your characteristic or personality into a mode, which one will it be?
Locrian.
Lydian.
Phrygian.
Dorian.
That's so true.
Yeah. I feel like that's
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Will Cuevas here. Actually, really great slideshow. Is it possible that we can get an email list going so that you can send it out to us as a reference for use in the future? I think it would be really helpful for, especially someone like me who's.
We will
just
do our
starting out this year.
best to like record this and like record like an actual like good quality version of us doing this panel. Put it
we
on
want to
YouTube.
do like a version of us recording it so
We'll do
that
it
it's
some- we'll do it
accessible
someday.
for people to use.
We'll probably
so
do like
that-
a YouTube kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Whose channel?
That's a good question.
Probably Ape
Probably
Music.
his.
Yeah, probably
If he wants
Sure.
to, I don't want to impose that upon you.
sure.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
great. I'll keep an eye
Yeah,
out for it.
of
Thanks a
course.
lot, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Hey guys, real quick question. I look at lots of arrangements of music that's like very clearly modal, and even the stuff that you showed.
Right.
Why do people always notate it with the key signature of the parent, major, or minor scale, and then use accidentals?
Right.
Every time like the natural 6 comes up, you have a natural in front of the 6.
That's a
Why not?
really good. That's a really
Yeah.
really good question. And my answer for that is that I'd rather be able to know. I'd rather know like what is the root note of the scale that I'm playing in.
Right. I'd rather know the parent
Right.
key of what it's relating to than trying to, be like, huh? It's
Yeah,
just like an easier relation as when we teach modes often, it's like relating to the parent, major, or minor scale. So I think it's just for sake of ease in how modes are often taught and instructed.
That and imagine just throwing all of those accidentals at the beginning of the measure also, because as you know sight readers, we see that and we immediately have an idea of okay, that's in this key. But if we start throwing in those other ones, it's almost kind of ambiguous as
Right,
to
exactly.
what it
Yeah,
is.
it's just like on the page. There's tons of accidentals at all times.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
like you either deal with them at the start or during
Yeah.
the piece. So
It also does help bring out the characteristic pitch sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Hey,
Do you have any tips for making Ionian sound more modal and less functional than just a major scale?
Don't use as much 1-4-5. Be okay
Absolutely.
with 1-2 minor 1. Just the thing that makes Ionian sound Ionian is one the characteristic pitch of the 4 resolving to the 3 and the 7 resolving to the 1, right? So if you avoid using those resolutions as much as you don't rely on them too much, then it won't sound overly Ionian.
Right.
yeah. Hey, if you guys aren't asking questions, can you keep it down? It's kind of hard to hear the questions and stuff. Sorry. Thank you. What's up?
Hey, so I just had a question. If you guys had any tips or advice for how a musician can kind of
Can we get more audio on the question mics,
Yeah, we
please?
can't really
Sorry,
hear.
it's tough.
Is this any better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, any tips or advice for a musician to be able to kind of retain all of this information, because it's a lot, different, keeping track of all the different modes and
I
how
would
they
say,
relate to.
I would say just kind of taking it one step at a time. So okay, today I'm gonna just focus on Ionian, making sure that I have a good handle on that, and then the next day, maybe I'll do Locrian, Dorian, just kind of instead of trying to do all of it one day, with any practicing, just focus on one thing at a time. So okay, I'm gonna look at Ionian first, really make sure I'm comfortable with that, and find some examples. Then Dorian, then Phrygian, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the best way to chunk it.
I also think that it's music theory is a means to an end, right? Music theory
Right.
is a means to an end of making good music and understanding good music. So I think if you approach it from the basis of creating stuff, if you continuously make stuff and you realize, oh, this is in Dorian, right? That's a good way to remember what it is. And the thing is, if you're not making stuff that uses this knowledge, then is the knowledge really that relevant anyway?
That deep.
Oh, and by any chance, will you guys be able to share the slides?
We were just saying to someone, we're gonna try and record a version of all 4 of us and probably put it on Ben's channel. So it would have the slides and us kind of talking through it, because I know some people, they take pictures and they look back and they're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
We
That'd be awesome.
so I think we kind of got to wrap it up. But I will say that on top of that, so this is a panel idea that we're kind of we tour around at as many cons as we can do,
Yeah.
essentially. And each year we try to change the subject matter. So this is the second video game music theory 101 panel that we've done, and we have plans for the next tour to do a whole new.
Yeah, we're excited.
We're really excited to share that with you guys, and we would love to. At least the 3 that we're doing, try to create a video format for this exact kind of a
absolutely.
thing. And all of you guys' feedback and comments and
Questions,
questions and stuff is helping what what will shape that project. So thank you guys all for coming to this. I hope you guys learned some stuff. Do you guys have anything you guys want to plug?
Oh yeah. So my quartet, it's like woodwinds and stuff. We're playing at the Belvedere lobby at 4 p.m. if you're interested. And I'm also doing my own panel tomorrow I did research on video game music and how it's beneficial for young children. Mages panel 1 at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow if you want to hear what I did. Anyone else got anything, Ben?
Tomorrow at 11:30.
Yeah, we have a conflict. That's the thing that sucks.
Is it here? It might be here. I'm not sure.
I think it is. I think your thing's here.
I think it's here. It is?
There you
Okay.
go.
I have a Q&A, so feel
Go
free
to
to
Ben,
save
he's
your
awesome.
question till tomorrow if you want to.
I am playing with VGM Collective today at 5 at the Belvedere. I'm playing with Disco Cactus at 2
Saturday.
tomorrow
Yeah.
on the main stage. And I'm doing something with the J Music Ensemble at 5 on Saturday in the Jam Clinic as well.
Busy boy. So this is kind of like the last official thing I have going on. However, keep an eye on my Twitter at FamilyJules7x for maybe potentially a secret concert. So.
Yay! Okay, let's go.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Have a good MAGFest.